We begin with escalating violence between Israel and Hezbollah. An Israeli drone has killed a member of the Lebanese group in the latest cross-border exchange. Authorities say the drone attacked a car on the outskirts of the town of Shahabiyah in the southern Tyre district. The Israeli army also struck several towns with missiles and artillery. Concerns are growing of an all-out war after both sides stepped up attacks in recent days. US Special Advisor Amos Hochstein is in Israel, meanwhile, for talks to prevent a further escalation. He's meeting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other senior officials. Hochstein will also travel to Lebanon. And in southern Lebanon, many towns and villages are in ruins after months of Israeli bombing. Some families are returning to what's left of their homes to mark the Muslim holiday of Eid. The UN says nearly 90,000 people have fled the area. Well, the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting there, so Hamdah Salhut joins us now from the Jordanian capital, Amman. So, Hamdah, let's start with that visit by the US diplomat. What can we expect out of Hochstein's talks with Israeli officials?
Well, the U.S. official has now met with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's President Isaac Herzog, as well as other senior defense and security officials. But it is worth noting that the Israelis themselves had said that any sort of diplomatic talks will not be the solution for the cross-border fire with Hezbollah. In fact, we've been hearing repeated remarks from Israeli officials for months, including Israel's defense minister, who himself has said that he's not afraid to turn Beirut into another Gaza. The exchanges of fire have intensified, not just in the last couple of days, but we've been seeing an uptick in activity over the last several weeks. And I'll remind you that this all started on October the 8th, just a day after Israel's war on Gaza began. Additionally, the Israeli Prime Minister held an assessment just last week where he ended up deciding that he would extend the evacuation of those towns and settlements in northern Israel until at least the end of August. And people from the north are saying they're furious with the government for not dealing with this issue. But the Israelis have said they are not afraid to go into a full-out war with Hezbollah.
Also today, the Israeli Prime Minister dissolving the war cabinet. What's prompted that move?
Well, as you'll recall, just last week, National Unity member Benny Gantz and members of his party decided to leave the war cabinet quite publicly, saying that not much was getting accomplished on the war effort and that Netanyahu didn't really have a plan for what was next in terms of Gaza and that the country is in dire need of new leadership. But on the other end of that, you had members of Netanyahu's own coalition, members of the far right, known ultranationalists, who now saw a gap in the war cabinet and demanded that Netanyahu give them a seat at that table. But it's something they had been demanding essentially since the beginning of the war, that they wanted to be involved in decision making, even though they didn't have any military security or defense experience. And their personal political views didn't align with what Netanyahu said is official Israeli policy, meaning no voluntary migration of Palestinians from Gaza and no reconstruction of illegal settlements inside of the Palestinian territory. So what will happen next? Well, Netanyahu will meet with a small group of advisors, mainly Israel's defense minister, perhaps the army chief of staff, people who were involved in the war cabinet to begin with, but he will ultimately be the decider on how the war will be prosecuted now, and he will have to make those decisions along with the country's security cabinet for any larger decisions that are regarding a ceasefire. And I just want to add that a member of Netanyahu's own party has come out in the last several hours and said that this is a government with no accomplishments and that perhaps it is time for the country to head towards elections so that there can be new leadership for a different kind of governance within Israel.
Let's thank Hamdah Salhut. She's reporting to us from Amman in Jordan because the Israeli government banned Al Jazeera from operating there. Let's bring in now journalist Oliver Marsden joining us on the other side of the Israeli-Lebanon border. He's joining us from Beirut. So first of all, talk us through how senior figure was killed in that Israeli drone strike today.
So The Hezbollah fighter Mohammed Ayub was hit earlier this morning in the town of Salah. Now, according to the Israelis, he is the head of a rocket unit within the Al-Nasser division. Now, of course, Hezbollah are staying tight-lipped. They're not confirming this, but what we do know is that he is the 342nd Hezbollah fighter to have been killed by Israel. And this comes after a week of upticks in strikes and the ferocity of the strikes by Hezbollah on northern Israel following the assassination of their commander, Talib Sami Abdullah. Now, in response to that, the Israelis have been hitting southern Lebanon daily with many strikes, including on the town of Janata just a few days ago, where they said they hit a Hezbollah munitions warehouse. This, of course, has been denied by Hezbollah. And again today, strikes in the south, including on the fighter Mohammed Ayub.
Strikes which have also displaced many Lebanese from their villages and towns along the border. Tell us what they're facing.
Well, of course, yes, according to the International Organization for Migration, more than 95,000 residents of southern Lebanon have been displaced by this fighting. They have had to move north to schools. I visited some that have been sheltering in abandoned hotels, and they've been staying with loved ones further north and friends. Now, today, over the holiday of Eid, many of those residents have in fact returned to the south. They've gone to mourn loved ones and visit the graves of those killed during this fight, this tit-for-tat exchange of fire since October the 8th between Hezbollah and the Israeli Defense Force. They've gone to check on their homes, they've gone to check on their belongings, and this comes despite the attacks. Today, yesterday, all week, there have been Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon, despite the fact there have been no strikes by Hezbollah in the last 48 hours on northern Israel. Now, in the town of Nakora, the municipality there, they worked in tandem with the Lebanese armed forces to help residents visit the cemetery and the mosque and pray for loved ones during this holiday of Eid.
All right, thank you so much, journalist Oliver Marsden there.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.